I've made it a goal of mine to speak to people who've lost a lot of weight because we can learn a lot from them.
I'm curious your hot take on the rise of Ozempic and kind of these drugs now.
When we're talking about injecting GLP-1s, like we're actually talking about something that people might actually need.
What are people getting wrong about being so focused on the food dyes, the seed oils, all that stuff?
The most unhealthy and the most dangerous thing that is happening right now nutrition-wise is the nonstop pushing of the carnivore diet.
I think right now is a really good time for society to get back to some just simple principles, eating real food, balancing it out, and exercising. What's up, Jordan? Good to see you on the show. You know, the last time I wanted to ask, was the last time we were together in person, like years ago in New York? Do you remember that? Have we seen each other in person since that time that I first met you in New York?
Bro, I don't think so. I think that was the last time we saw each other.
So at that point, you know, I know you're a 27th degree black belt in coffee. We ended up getting some coffee. I got my coffee right here, by the way.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. But anyways, I got to meet you because I was out there talking to Gary Vee, and you know, you at the time were his trainer.
That's why you were there. Got it. Okay.
And I was doing like a talk for like some company, and I ended up, anyways. So I want to kind of go way back. You know, we first met because you were Gary Vee's trainer, and I was going out to go see Gary Vee. I was like, I was like, Jordan's his trainer. I'd love to meet him. I'd love to get to know him better. And we had a great conversation ever since then. I've kind of just stayed connected. But I want to kind of go back before that. And I was doing some research. I didn't know this at the time. But I look at like what you put out on social media as kind of like no BS, straightforward nutrition and fitness kind of talk. But you came up with Louie Simmons. And dude, I've had limited experience, but some experience with Louie Simmons. And I would say that out of anything, he is the most complex person about powerlifting I've ever met in my life. So do you think that because you came up in that system, it pivoted you to be like so simplistic in your approach because him and the conjugate method is just absolutely insane to wrap my head around?
It's a great question. And I'll start by saying, you know, Louie was like a father to me, and he's just like, he's very misunderstood for people who didn't really get to spend any time with him. Louie is, rest his soul, just one of the most incredible people in the world. Treated me like a son, and he let me come train with him. And I was training with him 11 times a week. So I would train with him Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. On each of those days, it would be 2 times a day. And then Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, it would be 1 time a day. And it was all like, he took care of everything. Like, he wouldn't let me pay for a meal. After every training session, he'd sit down with me and he would explain it to me. He let me take, I was 21 at the time. He let me take the Westside Barbell certification for free. It was an extraordinary experience. And while the Westside Barbell, the conjugate method, I think it appears complex. I think it can appear complex. I'm not going to say it's not. It might be. I might just have that curse of knowledge where you're like, once you understand it, you forget what it's like to be a beginner. It just makes sense once you understand it. Once you understand the science, once you understand how training works and how adaptation takes place, it's just like, oh, this makes sense. Like, all of it makes sense. So what I loved about Louie is when he would sit down and we would talk for hours and hours and hours, he would explain it very simply. He didn't have to explain it like Vladimir Zatsiorsky. He didn't have to explain it like Mel Siff. He would explain it very simply, very basically. And I think I took a lot from how he was able to break these complex topics down into very simple to easy to understand terms. And Louie, I think, is arguably the king of analogies. He's the king of just taking something very complex and making you understand it in the most simplest terms. And I don't think he always would do that well when he was writing an article. I think it wasn't the best when it would come across. But when you're just talking to him, he would make a very complex topic very simple. And so I like to think I took that from him and just modeled a lot of my methodology and discussions after how he taught me.
Jordan, as an outsider, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because I'm curious, because I wouldn't have said that the conjugate method is super complex, in that my understanding of it peripherally, and I think I just read the one article that was part of the CrossFit L3 on the conjugate method, and that's where I'm getting this from. My understanding is that it's just very max effort heavy, right? That's pretty much it. It's
no.
Okay.
That's
but
one
it's
part
different.
of it.
Bands and chains and bamboos and this and
So
that.
There's 2 major components, and then from each component you can break it down further.
Okay.
The one component is max effort. So throughout the week, you have 4 training days if you're training for powerlifting, and now it's not just powerlifting. Now they actually do a lot of fighting, mixed martial arts, grappling, and all that. You know, Dante Leon trains there. But there you have the max effort method, and then you have the dynamic effort method. So the max effort method is when you're lifting to a max or a near max as heavy as possible. The dynamic effort method is when you're lifting as quickly as possible, as explosively as possible. You're trying to improve your rate of force development. You're trying to improve your force production. Those are the 2 different days. But even that's just a little bit of an oversimplification, because it's not like you're only training each of those individually on each day. Like on your max effort day, you're still using the repetition method. You're still trying to move very quickly. On your dynamic effort day, I think one of the major overlooked components of the dynamic effort day is the massive reduction in training intensity in terms of how heavy you're lifting, which allows you more recovery time, and it does allow you to work on more speed and explosive power. So you're doing box jumps, you're doing depth jumps, you're doing different jumping mechanisms, you're doing explosive work, rotational work for athletes, and then you also go into your banded and your chain and your accommodating resistance lifts as well. But I think a lot of people put too much emphasis on the bands and chains and accommodating resistance, and not as much emphasis on the intent of the way you're lifting. It's the intent of how you're lifting, not necessarily the tools that you're using, that matter the most. So the intent of dynamic effort work is to move as quickly and explosively as possible. And as long as that's your intent, you're going to be getting the training effect. The bands and chains and accommodating resistance can provide wonderful training tools and different options to help you achieve that goal. But the ultimate, and think about it this way, you can't jump slowly, right? Like you can't, if you're trying to jump as high as you can, you're not going to do that slowly. You have to do it as fast and as explosively as you possibly can, or else you're not going to jump high. And so the intent of dynamic effort is to move as quickly and as explosively as possible. And with that, it helps to have a lighter amount of weight, a lower amount of weight, which can help you do that more comfortably and safely. So that's the general concept of it.
Got it.
Dude, I gotta tell you. So I just, when I saw that you trained with Louie Simmons, I have such a place like in my soul for Louie Simmons. And for anyone who didn't know him, he had these 2 axes across his chest that were like bleeding and like a tattoo. This man looked like he would just rip your face off. But he was gentle and he was compassionate. And he broke his back, ended up creating the reverse hyper, which is just a game changer. But anyways, I show up to Louie Simmons for a seminar. This is so long ago. And I was in Columbus, Ohio. And I knock on the door. It's like 4:30 in the morning. And this is the lasting impression that Louie Simmons left on me. I show up. I'm like at the time, I'm the CrossFit Games champion. So I was the current champion. I knock on the door. He's like, hey, welcome to the gym.
Welcome to Westside Barbell.
Welcome to Westside Barbell. So dude, I walk in and like, he doesn't know who the hell I am. He doesn't care. Right. And dude, there is 4 guys in a squat rack, and I'll never forget this forever. 4 guys in a squat rack with accommodating resistance, right? So they were using, if I'm not mistaken, they were using chains. I don't think they were using bands. They're just using chains. And this guy, as I'm walking in, it's like 4:30 in the morning. It's snowing outside. As he's coming out of the pocket, his nose starts bleeding profusely. Like I'm not saying a little bit, like a lot. And he still finished his set. Put the bar back. No one said a word. They left the blood on the ground and they just kept training. And that was like the culture that these guys are there at 4:30, 5 a.m. and that they are going to train so hard that like that was a common thing that happened. Anyways, after that, we went on a seminar with Louie. And when he started talking numbers and whatnot, it was really eye-opening for me how you were maxing out on a regular basis, but utilizing different tools to do so. So, but anyways, that was my Louie Simmons, West Side.
Louie would go get surgery, and they would be like, "Hey, you have to stay in the hospital. Like, you can't leave yet." And he'd be like, "No, fuck this." And he would leave the hospital, and he would go max out a bench press, like after having like throat surgery or after like just insane. He'd still have a tube in his throat. Like the guy was absolutely nuts, and yeah. And I think it will be interesting to see as time goes on, because I think our generation might be among the last to really fully appreciate him, because the younger generation won't have been around when he was alive. And I mean, when I was getting into lifting, Westside was a cult. Like you found his videos on YouTube, and like I remember finding his videos. I was just like, this is it. Like, this is the guy. And like people would get so wrapped up in Westside. Westside, to be a part of Westside was just like an absolute cult following. You don't really see that anymore now. So he completely changed the entire trajectory of weightlifting, not just in America, but in the world.
You guys have seen Westside versus the World, right? The documentary.
Yeah. Amazing.
Dude, it's awesome that you guys have experienced that in person. Just watching the documentary, it's like it's just a different breed of human.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the fact that you were able to train there for so long, I got to experience it. I've been honored to train with a lot of great coaches, but that one, again, left an impression on me. Here I am all these years later, I'm thinking back on that. But, fast forward a little bit, you competed in powerlifting for a while. And then when you and I met, you were Gary Vee's trainer. I'd love to kind of get some context on the impact that Gary Vee had on you. Because I heard you on an interview not that long ago say that like meeting him, training him for, I want to say it was 3 years, 3 or 4 years was like life-changing for you.
3 years.
And how did you become Gary Vee's trainer? And for those people that don't know Gary Vee, he's an entrepreneur. He's a chairman of VaynerMedia. He's all over the internet. So if you look, basically everybody who listens to this podcast has to know who Gary Vee is. How did you become his trainer, and what impact did he have on your life?
Yeah, so it's sort of a long story. I'll try and make it as brief as I can. I started making content in 2011. So I started my website in 2011. I was in college, and I was basically, this is before Instagram existed. I started my website when I was training at Westside. That's how I was training at Westside in the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college. And one of my mentors at the time, he was like, dude, you're training at Westside? Like, you gotta start a website. You gotta start a blog. You gotta start writing about this stuff. And so I didn't know how to make a website. So my friend literally like bought my domain name, got me the website, transferred the details over to me. And he was like, all right, just start writing. Just write an article every single week, just write and help people. So all I did was I was just really uploading videos to YouTube and writing articles to try and help people understand training and nutrition. And I did this every single week. And and nowadays people think of making content as an Instagram video, but back in the day, like 2010, 2011, 12, 13, 14, it was article writing. And articles were like these long 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 words. It would take me a week, like 16 to 24 hours of actual work to write one piece of content and make one really good article and video. And for the first like 2 years, no one would read my website. No one would go. I'd get like 20 views a day on my website, and 18 of them were my mom. And like, just no one was viewing it. One of the articles I wrote, which to this day is one of my least popular, least read articles ever, it was about how to improve your posture if you work at a desk all day. Just like simple strategies if you struggle with posture. This person who, again, like this was I wrote this article in 2012. So the person who, I had no idea who it was. The person who left a comment, asked a question. And at this point, like I wasn't getting many comments or questions. So I was replying to all of them in depth. And that was it. So someone replied to this article. That was it. I didn't know who they were, didn't know where they were from, didn't know anything about them, but I replied. Long story short, it turns out the person who replied to that article, his name is Mike Vacanti. And he at that time was an accountant in Chicago in 2012. He ended up leaving Chicago, moving to New York City because he wanted to be a personal trainer. He ended up meeting Gary Vaynerchuk when he was in New York City, and he became Gary's first personal trainer. Mm. He coached Gary for 2 years, from like 2014 to 2016. And then after that point, Gary had always had some pain and postural issues, and he had some movement issues. And so when Mike's contract was up, Gary said, "Who's going to coach me now?" And Mike said, "I think I know a guy." And he had followed me ever since he left a comment on my article. I still didn't know who he was. I didn't know that Mike was the guy that left a comment. And at this point now I'm living in Tel Aviv in Israel. And I get reached out to by Mike, and it's like, "Hey, how would you like to coach Gary Vaynerchuk?" Still not knowing this is the guy that I replied to in 2012. And I thought it was a joke. I was like, there's no way this is real. There's no way that like I'm have the potential to be Gary's coach. I fly from Tel Aviv to New York City, coach Gary for an hour for an interview, fly back to Tel Aviv. My roommate doesn't even know I left the country. And then I don't hear anything for 6 weeks. I just assume I didn't get the job because it's been 6 weeks. all of a sudden it's 10 p.m. in Haifa. I'm at my family's house in this northern city of Israel. And I get a text message from an unknown number and it says, "Are you ready?" And again, this is 6 weeks later. I'm not thinking about it. Like, I think I just didn't get the job. So I reply, "Who the fuck is this?"
You're like, ready for what?
Yeah, like, who the fuck is this? And then I get a picture of Gary shirtless and flexing. And that's how I found out I got the job coaching Gary. So then a week later, I moved from Tel Aviv to New York City. And I coached Gary 3 years straight, 7 days a week, no weekends, no vacations, no breaks. Like, if Gary was in Hong Kong, I was in Hong Kong. If he was in LA, I was in LA, everywhere, like every single day for 3 years. And in terms of like what I learned from him, I think there are two major things I learned from him. And there's a lot, but two major impacts. The first one is, the way I'll frame it is this: Gary works harder than anyone I've ever met. Like, it's in the amount this guy works is fucking insane. I hope I can swear. It's insane.
Go for it.
This guy, like, you wouldn't believe, from 5 a.m. until 2 a.m. And that's the right time frame, from 5 a.m. until all day, and then 2 a.m. Like, he's going nonstop all day, every day, meeting. Like, he has his shower is in the calendar. His ride to the office is in the calendar. Every time he's on a drive, he's got meetings on the drive. Like, if he's taking a jet somewhere, he'll fly his employees with him on the jet so he can have meetings on the jet, and then they'll fly back once he lands. Like, he doesn't stop going all day, every day. And what I learned is, if I ever need to do better with business, I can just work harder. Like, that's really like it, and it's almost a freeing feeling to know it's like, well, I could just work harder. And seeing that in real time, it's one of those things that seeing is believing. I didn't realize how hard I could work until I saw how hard Gary worked. And that was it was encouraging for me, because it's like, if I ever need to do better, I could just work more like that. And that's really it. The other side of it, though, and the second thing I learned is, I don't want the life that Gary has. That was like, and Gary, he was on my podcast recently, and we spoke about, we sort of commiserated over our time together. And he even said, like, he spent more time with me than his wife and kids, than his family did. And one of the reasons that I work so hard, especially because I worked so hard earlier, is that I could spend more time with my wife and my daughters and just be home more. Like, I don't want to be away from my family. I don't want to be working all the time. Like, I want to do jiu-jitsu with my daughter in the garage at 10 a.m. I want to be the coaches in their sports. Like, I want to go to their parent teacher conferences. Like, work for me I don't want it to be the most important thing, but it is also really helpful to know that if I ever need to crank it up, the option is there. Like, I can go harder, but I also don't want his life. And I think a lot of people see his life, or the life of celebrities, or what they post about it on social media. They see the private jets. They see like this, like the amount of money that they might have. They Google search the net worth, and they're like, "Oh, I'd love to have that." It's like, you'd like to have the result, but you would not, if you knew what you had to do in order to get it, you wouldn't want it. And so for me, it's like, I think one of the major benefits was just knowing, I've seen this life. I don't want this life. I'm okay with less money and less work in order to have a more relaxed, just homely life.
And to clarify, Jordan, did you started your family after those 3 years, or was there any overlap?
Yeah.
There?
So I started dating my now wife while him and I were together, but we didn't get engaged until after, and we didn't have our kids until, like, there's no way you could have kids. And I mean, even the dating was really difficult because I was gone. Like, it was actually probably the biggest benefit is her and I were long distance. She lived in Atlanta and I was based out of New York. I don't think it would have worked if she lived in New York, because she would have been like, "Why are you never here?"
Right.
So because we were long distance, it actually helped, because there wasn't the expectation that I was supposed to be there all the time. So we were long distance for 2 years.
I was just going to say, man, those two lessons are, the self-awareness of wanting like what you want, and not just wanting what you like think you should want, but also knowing that like at any point you can flip the switch and be in a season where like I have to step things up. Like, yeah, that's a superpower, man. Like, having both of those, because I feel like it's easy to have one or the other, but having both is just, I love how you worded that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Jordan. I mean, what a cool perspective. I think at a young age you had that too, right? Where sometimes I look back on my life, and I've had some interesting life experiences at a relatively young age. In particular, like spending time in the hospital when my daughter was sick. some would say like, oh, that really sucks. And of course it sucks. But during that time, you learn so much. And what's blessing about that is like for you working with Gary Vee to like, you stopped working with him when you were like, what, 25 or 28 or something like that? Was it?
I stopped when I was 28. Yeah.
Yeah. So think about that. I mean,
one of those. Yeah.
Bro, imagine like those lessons learned. You're traveling the world. And like, I think most people when they're like in their early 20s, they have this grandiose vision of like money and success is everything. But you at an early age got to know like, oh, damn, dude, there's another side to that. So like, what a blessing that is to have that experience so early, because now you're not making mistakes going through your 30s. You already know what you want and you could live the life that you want through your 30s instead of like learning through your 30s. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, like I'm still making a lot of mistakes, but like fully understand, like I think one of the biggest things for me was living abroad, living in other countries, traveling. And they're like, this is something that I want my girls to do when they get older. Like my mom, what a blessing. She didn't make me go to college, at least not right away. I took a year off between high school and college and I traveled the world. And I think seeing how, like you said, like, especially here in the West, money is everything. It's like, if you've got money, you're good. And it's like, what's interesting to me is when you look at the longest living people in the world and like there are objective happiness ratings in the world, like which countries, which people are happier, live longer. It's not here in the West. It's like, it's not here in the West. It's not the people with the most money. It's like the people who live the longest. It's not the entrepreneurs. But statistically, it's actually people have much more work-life balance. And so for me, being able to travel and go all over the world, go to Asia, go all over the world, being able to see how people were so happy and so healthy without having riches gave me a tremendous amount of perspective in terms of being able to be like, I just need enough to be healthy, to provide for my family. And I'm going to get much more fulfillment. I think chasing happiness is not the best thing. I think chasing fulfillment is a much better goal, because happiness, you can chase happiness through drugs. You can chase happiness through ego, but fulfillment is a different. And so when you chase fulfillment, it's something that's often difficult. It's challenging. You have to overcome things in order to be fulfilled. And I think chasing fulfillment is what's going to lead to a much healthier, happier, longer life, ideally. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the people that we admire here in the West are people who are just chasing money at all cost and not actually focusing on family and community and becoming a better person.
Did you grow up? Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Israel?
No. So we grew up in Massachusetts.
Okay, but you still have family in Israel.
Yeah. So it's they're not blood family. When I went there when I was 16, and they basically like took me into their home, and like they're basically like, I was the best man at their daughter's wedding. They gave me the key to their house. Like they're my family, but they're not blood.
And how long did you live in Israel for?
About 3 years.
Yeah. So do you think some of your perspective and what you just said has to do with your time, obviously, in Israel, like regardless of what you did with Gary Vee, only because you spent 3 years in a completely different culture, especially being in Tel Aviv? Like, I can only imagine what it's like being there in the Mecca of like, you have all these different world religions that are coming in.
Mm-hmm.
You have this very unique culture of like East meets. What an interesting dynamic. Do you think that was part of like your mindset shift, or do you think it really was all this travel with Gary Vee?
It all plays into it. And I mean, there's one thing that will always stand out in my mind. This moment changed my life forever. One time I was in Israel, and I went to go, like, I just had to go get some deodorant. And I just had to go get deodorant, and I was going to this local shop, and yeah, they have chain stores, but not as many as we have here. Like they don't have like the Costco. They don't have it's more family owned businesses. So it was like a Wednesday, and I was going to get some deodorant at this family owned shop, and at 2 p.m, and it's a beautiful day out because almost every day is gorgeous. And I'm walking in, and the guy is closing the gate. Like he's just closing the gate to like shut the shop down at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. I was like, what's going on? And he was like, it's a beautiful day. I'm going to go take my kids to the beach. I'm closing early. I was just like, that wouldn't happen here in the United States. Like not usually. Like that hit home with me so deeply. And this is long before I had a wife. I didn't even have a girlfriend at the time, before kids. Like he was just like, he's made enough money for the day. he's going to go and spend the rest of the day with his family. Like, I'm done. And that one moment massively impacted my life.
Are you guys familiar with the parable of the Mexican fisherman? It's like the best story to like literally illustrate just that. Are you familiar with that at all?
So say it.
Yeah, so it's super short. I'll keep it super short. So it's just a story of there's this Mexican fisherman and this like American investment banker who's on vacation starts talking to him. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, yeah, I fish a little bit in the mornings to get enough fish for my family, and then I hang out with my family for the rest of the day. And he's like, well, you could really, and then he goes on this back and forth of like, you can hire other friends to help you, and you can, like expand, and you can get all these boats. And the Mexican fisherman keeps asking, and then what? And then what? And then by the end of this whole, like, you can build this whole like fishing business. He's like, yeah. And then you can have all this time to spend with your family. And he's like, it just goes back to what he's doing now. And it's the perfect story of kind of everything you're illustrating, right? Where like we get so caught up in this rat race that, and maybe not in every case, can get us back to where we can just do what we need to do and still prioritize the family time. It's a great story. Chris Williamson brings it up a lot, but it's like the perfect illustration of what you were just saying.
I love that. Yeah. It's so true. And I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from my buddy named Pat, when I was really in the beginning of wanting to build my business, he said, making more money will solve more problems until you get to a point in which making more money will cause more problems. and there's this line that you have to figure out, like, where is that line? And I think many people, I see this in the fitness industry a lot. People are like, I need to make $5K a month. I need to make $10K a month. I need to make $20K a month. And it just keeps going up because you adjust your lifestyle to fit however much you're making now. And so like, if you think you need 10K a month, well, once you get to 10K, you're going to be like,
yeah, I need 15.
Now I need 15. Now I need 20. And then you're comparing to people who are making more. It's like, it's a never ending rat race. It's never ending. And it's like, but what are you doing with this money? What are you doing with your time? And you really adjust to whatever your lifestyle is now, to then you just think you need more and more and more and more, when in reality, the most amazing things are usually staring right in front of you and don't cost anything.
So let's talk about that. So you get married, you have 2 girls, right? You had a newborn as of recently. And then how old is your older daughter?
She's just over 2. I swear she's a Hamas terrorist. This girl is she's absolutely insane. She's absolutely insane. She's nuts, dude.
That was a far turn I wasn't expecting. There's many things you can say your daughter is.
She is I love this girl so much. She's crazy. This 2-year-old phase is unreal. I've never seen anything like it.
So Gabe's in that mix too.
Yeah, our boy is going to turn 2 in a month. So he's like, we're seeing like the beginnings of it. And, boy. Oh, yeah.
He's running around and stuff. Like he's fully mobile.
And literally like, it's been like a light switch over the past month, I would say. So from being 2 months from being 2 to now, it's just like a new level of energy and a new level of like testing boundaries that has been like a light switch, and it gets real interesting for sure.
It's incredible. It's really insane to watch the testing the boundaries, like doing something literally just to see what your response will be. Like they know it's going to upset you. It's extraordinary to watch. Yeah. It's absolutely incredible.
Dude, I don't remember what any of that was like. So for those, for you guys, it's funny the way it works. The days are long and the years are short. It's just it's so powerful when you think about kids. Because here I am, my kids are 13 and 10, and
2 girls.
I have a boy and a girl. And
okay.
Yeah, I have my daughter's 13. She's going into high school next year, and then my son's 10, and he's your typical boy, and my daughter's like, I don't even know what typical is anymore. But if you could think about,
he's like, a real he him, and she's a real she her.
There you go. That's there you go. But I wanted to ask you. You've dedicated your life, as Gabe and I have as well, to the fitness space. I've been in the game since I was really young, and same with you. And try and expose myself, try and gain perspective, try and learn new things. I want to talk about the CGM that you wore for a bit, and I wore a CGM for a while, which I thought was really interesting. CGM is a continuous glucose monitor. But I want to start with the family stuff, because I think that's way more important than us talking about a CGM, which is, so you get married, you have two girls, And, raising a daughter myself, I've recognized the struggles and the challenges that society and life can face, especially coming from a fitness background. So what are you trying to do? I saw some stuff online about some of the kind of concepts you're trying to work with your girls, but I'm wondering what you're layering in particular with your 2-year-old to help her have a healthy relationship with fitness and nutrition.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm sure I will learn much more as she gets older. The most important thing is I'm letting her see, and not just me and my wife as well, that's what we do. Like every day we take a walk every day. So every afternoon we're taking a walk as a family together. And I'm racing her and like jumping off curbs and just doing random stuff. But we're always out. So we're out and we're moving. This is just what we do as a family. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be exercise. It's just movement is a part of our life. So that's number one. I'm also very blessed. I have a gym in the garage. She's out there all the time. We've got the gymnastics rings, and right now she's just over 2 and she's already trying to get personal records, see how long she can hold on to them for. She hit 14 seconds. She just, and she calls it, in her mind, she's swinging. Just more swing. She just wants to hold on for as long as she can. We're out there. I've got the parallel bars, the dip bars, and she's just wants to play on those. She wants me to get those out. So we've got the Jiu-Jitsu mats. And so she wants me to, she loves it when I make her fly, where I'll pick her up on my feet and she flies up over my head. And it's just seeing that's what we do is, I think, probably the most important part. You could say whatever you want. John Deloney has an amazing line, which is your actions are a language. And so we could use our speech however we want, but it doesn't matter what you say if your actions don't align with it. And so just her seeing my wife and I be very active and moving is, I think, the most important. And same thing with nutrition. It's seeing what we do. It's crazy to see how we're not restricting her nutrition. It's not like we're not going to allow her to have ice cream. This is really important. I've seen many parents you're not allowed to have sweets, you're not allowed to have this. And then those kids, when they go to another kid's house or when they get older, they go completely overboard because they have no idea how to have self-control. We see this with alcohol a lot too. I remember the kids growing up, the parents who would just be you're never allowed to drink. Alcohol is terrible. You can't ever drink. When those kids went to college, those kids were going to the hospital for binge drinking because they had never learned how to have any self moderation component with it. So it is crazy though, because she loves ice cream. And when we sit her down at the dinner table, she'll try and test us. And before dinner starts, we'll always ask what do you want to eat? And we have everything there, but you can choose. And she'll look at us. She'll be ice cream. No, you can't have ice cream yet. And we're not going to have it every day, but she'll be first thing I want ice cream. It's nope, I'm not having ice cream right now. You see what mom and dad are eating, you see what Ima and Abba are eating, we're going to eat fruits and vegetables. We're going to have protein. We're going to have it. And so she can see what we do. And then if we want to have some ice cream at the end, great. What kids I think are miraculous at oftentimes is they'll just stop when they're full. I'm done. It could be the most delicious, highly palatable thing ever. They're done when they're full. And so we go over the top to really show her how much we respect that. So if she's eating ice cream and she's all done, she could have only taken 4 bites, but all done with the ice cream. Amazing. You're done when you're full. Awesome. No more. And we'll throw it out. None of the you have to finish it because they're starving kids stuff. You're done. Cool. Throw it out. We don't need it. That's fine. So a lot of what we do is just simply trying to model what is our behavior for her and going over the top on things that we think are positive. And Jordan Peterson talks a lot about this as well, especially with family. One of the issues that we'll often do is we'll nitpick on the things that we don't like, and we won't praise the things that we do like, because oftentimes when we see someone doing something good, in our mind we'll just think, well, that's what they should be doing, so why am I going to say anything? But if you go over the top to praise a good behavior, then that's dog training 101. It's also just how you also you train people to behave in a way that is appropriate. You don't just nitpick on the negative, but you praise the positive. And so for her and for our God willing, all of our children, that's what we'll do. We'll just go over the top to praise good behavior and model our behavior as well.
What I love that you mentioned, Jordan, is you kept saying you and your wife are both active. You and your wife are both doing that. And I think that that's incredibly important, specifically because you're raising daughters, right? Like there's something to be said about, sons looking up to their dads. Obviously they're going to look up to their moms as well, but daughters looking to their moms. And I think that that's a big, big piece. And a question that we get a decent amount, because I know that most of our audience is men, it's dads, it's husbands. And a question we get is, hey, like I've gotten on the path. I'm seeing the difference, fitness, nutrition. How do I get my spouse to come along? How do I get them to buy in? What's kind of your suggestion there? Because it's tough, man. Like me and Jason have tried kind of answering it. And it's a really, really tough thing to do because people kind of have to be ready to make that shift. And I can get the excitement of like, hey, I started doing this. Like, look at how good I feel. Look at all these changes that are happening. And you kind of want to like bring them with you. But if you force that too much when it's not the time yet, you can almost do more harm than good. So any advice there that you can share?
Yeah, it's a very difficult topic. You phrase it super well. And you're right. If you do it wrong, you could do more harm than good. I'll start by framing it from this perspective. I think you're right. Like often girls will look up to their mother, boys will look up to their father as how they want to behave. I think for me as a husband and as a father, I want to set the example of how my girls should be treated by men in their life. So like the way I treat my wife will be what they will expect of other men in their life. And so, that's how I'm approaching it. Oftentimes when I'm speaking to my wife is like, if they're like, when they're watching or when they're listening, it's like, it should always be the same because they're always watching and listening, but I want to model who like the type of person they should be with when they're older. So with that in mind, one of the, and this is very controversial, but I very much believe it's true. One of the things I'm most proud of, especially on my podcast, is I've been able to speak with many, many, many people who've lost over 100 pounds and kept it off. And I've made it a goal of mine to speak to people who've lost a lot of weight and kept it off because we can learn a lot from them. Like, let's talk to the people who've actually struggled with it, who've been there. And the craziest thing, or at least the most insightful thing that I've learned from people who've lost over 100 pounds and be able to keep it off is the reason why, like the moment they made that change, it was not based out of excitement for making progress. It was not based out of anything other than fear. Fear is what caused this change. And this is something that I think is really important for people to understand. You said people need to be ready. Well, what causes someone to become ready? And we think about it with drug addicts, for example, like when they hit rock bottom. What's rock bottom? Rock bottom is fear of what's going to happen if they continue on the path that they're on. And so the difficult point here is I don't want people to scare the shit out of their spouse. That's not what I'm saying. What I do think we need to understand is your role is to be as supportive and as encouraging as you possibly can. And especially what I see with a lot of men who get really into fitness is oftentimes whatever their spouse is doing, it isn't enough. Like maybe they went on a walk and like, no, but you should be doing more. Like you should be doing HIIT. You should be doing rowing. You should be doing burpees. Like you should be doing weightlifting. It's like, hold on. Let's just start with really encouraging them with where they are now and being supportive now. Because again, like Jordan Peterson talks about all the time, if it's always they're not doing enough, trust me, they're in their own head. They know they aren't where they want to be. If someone is out of shape, they're not fit, like they know they should be doing more. Probably even yourself, if you're already really involved in fitness, even you're probably like, I need to be doing more. Like we are our own harshest critics. So if they're doing something, if you see them have water instead of Coke, hey, I just want to let you know, I see you're having that water. Awesome. Awesome fucking job. I'm super proud of you. If you see them like go on a 15-minute walk to prioritize themselves, or like they're up and walking around when normally they'd be sitting, hey, I noticed that. I'm really proud of you. Like invite them to come with you. And by the way, don't expect them to change everything to go to the level that you're at. Maybe you should tone it down a little bit to meet them where they're at. So instead of saying, hey, come to CrossFit with me, it's like, hey, how about I go on a walk with you? Right. And I think a lot of the people who get really into fitness, they don't understand how impactful walking is and how beneficial it really is. And again, going back to the people who live the longest, that are the healthiest in the world, it's not powerlifters, it's not CrossFitters, It's not people who are doing high intensity. Like the people who live the longest are the people who walk the most. They just walk. They're not like necessarily doing Orange Theory classes or any of that. Like, and it's all wonderful to do that. But the point in me emphasizing this is walking is exercise. Walking is incredibly beneficial for your health. And if your spouse is just starting with that, I think it's the best place to start.
Well, just going back, what was controversial about what you just said?
Nothing.
I was waiting for the drum roll, please.
The fear,
the fear. But I get what you're saying. Is that like?
Yeah.
I think that was a really interesting way to put it, especially because we just had Tony Blauer on the podcast, and he was talking about, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a self-defense expert. He's been teaching martial arts and self-defense. He's been teaching self-defense and fear management for like 50 years. I mean, dude, he's been in the game forever. And he was talking about how fear could be a phenomenal driver and also debilitating tool.
Yes.
But I think you bring up a really interesting point about the drug addict. And I don't claim to have an expertise in that, but I just have an idea that at some point they get to a point, and just from talking to different people, even on this show, we've talked to people who have struggled with drugs, and they got to a point where like enough was enough. And I think there was that fear element that if they didn't make a change, they were going to do something that they can't come back from. Right. And so from all these people you've talked to who have lost 100 pounds, which I hadn't thought about it through that lens, but it's really interesting because, you know, we help a lot of people get in better shape, but I can't say that I've had a lot of people at the gym, but a lot is relative. You know, losing 100 pounds is a big feat.
Yes.
And more important than that, keeping it off is a big feat. And so it really starts to get down to the psychology of it, where it's not just like a motivational thing, because that goes away. It's the discipline thing. So fear was the number one element. They got to a point where they said, hey, if I don't make a change, I'm not going to be here for my kids. That type of thing. Yeah.
Correct. I'm not going to be here for my kids, or my kids are going to struggle with the same thing that I struggle with. Anything, or like just a heart attack, like I'm going to die, and maybe not related to kids, but it's the fear. Something happens where they're like, oh, fuck. Like this is actually a problem.
Jordan, on that note, I'm curious your hot take on the rise of Ozempic and kind of these drugs now. How do you see that fitting into this moving forward and potentially being something that could help people that need that just catalyst to get going versus, you know, the flip side of the coin, which is like, hey, now we have this thing that is potentially a shortcut without learning the habits. And are you just getting people on something that they're going to need to be on forever? And what, you know, potential downfalls does that have? What's your hot take on that? Yeah.
So like with everything, especially nowadays, there seems to be little to no nuance, and people are either on like they're the best thing in the world and everyone needs to be taking them, or they're evil, they're cheating, you should never do them, what's wrong with you? And it's like, hold on, there's a huge middle ground here that we have to discuss. And so what I'll say is this, just purely from how they work, it's a miracle. Like if we want to talk about a magic fucking pill, like, and by the way, the ultimate magic pill is exercise and nutrition. That's the ultimate magic pill. That's just like to get that out of the way. But if we're going to talk about an actual drug that by and large, there are some real side effects for some people, but by and large, it's safe and it's getting safer and safer and safer. It's pretty insane what these drugs can do to help people who really need it. In terms of, I think it's important for people to understand what are GLP-1s, like what are they doing? And I don't think anyone logically would look at a diabetic, and let's just say a type 1 diabetic. No one would look at a type 1 diabetic and say like, you shouldn't take insulin. That's cheating, right? It's their body is not producing insulin.
Right.
So they need to inject it.
Especially type 1. No one would ever,
correct. Especially type 1. What people don't understand is that we've known for a long time that people are impacted differently by hunger. Some people struggle with hunger more. Some people struggle with hunger less. And the easiest way to think about this is there are people who really struggle to gain weight. And someone who struggles to gain weight, if you know one of them, it's often like a younger dude who's really struggling to gain weight. Like he'll say, I'm eating so much. But you actually hang out with them for a day. They have a bite here, a bite there, and then they stop eating. Like they get a meatball sub, but like they have 1.5 bites. They're like, oh, I'm stuffed. It's some people it's easier for them to get full, and other people it's much more difficult for them to get full. And by the way, this is only talking about from a physiological perspective, like not even discussing the environmental impacts of hunger and the trauma that could impact your hunger and all that. Anyway, it is very clear that some people, especially people who struggle with their weight, do not produce, they are resistant to GLP-1 or do not produce enough GLP-1 in the same way that a diabetic does not produce insulin, or a type 2 diabetic might be resistant to insulin. And so when we're talking about injecting GLP-1s, like we're actually talking about something that people might actually need. And when people say like, well, just eat less. Imagine if you're struggling with money and I was like, well, just make more. Like that's literally what you're saying. When you say, well, just eat less and move more, I'm just telling you, just make more and spend less, bro. It's the exact same thing. And so GLP-1s can be a wonderful tool for people who really struggle with their weight, who are actually not producing enough and or are significantly resistant to them. I think if it's between being 100 pounds overweight or and taking a GLP-1, and so you can lose that weight, or being 100 pounds overweight and not taking it, and like you're just gonna suffer with being that overweight for the rest of your life and having all the negative health consequences of having that much extra fat, it's a no-brainer. You take the GLP-1s because it's gonna help everything in your life. And ideally, at the same time, you're focusing on increasing your protein intake, eating higher quality foods. You're not gonna eat a garbage diet while taking GLP-1s. There has to be an education component and a lifestyle change component as well. But like, there's no question that for someone who's 100 pounds plus overweight, taking a GLP-1 could save their life and help them live a much higher quality life. And like, you take someone who's 100 plus, I'm just using 100, it could be 75, could be 50. I probably wouldn't do it much below that. I don't think, if you got to lose 10 pounds, you shouldn't be on a GLP-1. That's fucking stupid. It's just not worth it. But like, if you're like 50, 75, 100 plus pounds, all of a sudden someone starts losing weight, all of a sudden their joints start feeling better. They can move more. They get more activity now. They just couldn't have done it before because they were in so much pain. Inflammation goes down, and now all of a sudden they're actually starting to strength train and lift weights. Like, you'd have to be psychotic to not recommend that. You'd have to be out of your mind, biased and not objective to say that that's inherently bad. It's not accurate. So there are people who actually need it and benefit from it, and for them, I fully support it. But again, for the people who want to lose 10 pounds, or for the people who are just like, you know what, I just want to make it easier, It's like, I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. There has to be a nuanced discussion around that. There is a discussion around people who struggle with eating disorders, like binge eating disorder, that I think is very under discussed right now, who it could potentially be beneficial for. But I'll say this, there are very real dangers and very real risks of taking them. And we're going to find out more. With that being said, they've been around for a long time. Like, a lot of people are just hearing about them now because celebrities have started using them. They've been around for well over 20 years, especially for people with type 2 diabetics. They've been around for a long time, and they're getting better and better and better and better. So while there are very real risks, and people have died from taking them, we have to say that, it's a relatively small risk. And compared to the risk of being severely overweight, it's a no-brainer.
I love the nuance in it, man. Yeah, I think the pushback would be, right, like, where are doctors or some of these companies that are going out and offering this through, like, you know, really quick, like, hey, hop on a call and, you know, we'll prescribe you whatever.
Correct.
Where are you drawing the line of, like you said, people that can really benefit from it? You know, is
Correct.
that an objective line that's being drawn, or is it a line that kind of keeps being pushed to one side because there's a lot of money to be made by pushing that line? So, but I appreciate the nuance.
We could talk about the same thing for TRT. You
That's
know,
right. That's right.
Like, a lot of dudes are like, oh yeah, like my test is at like 600 and like I need to get on TRT. It's like, what the fuck? And they call a doctor to get on TRT so they can get to super physiological doses. It's like, and you're making fun of someone else for getting on a GLP-1. Like, bro, you're doing the same fucking thing. You got to check yourself. It's crazy.
Dude, yeah. The TRT conversation is definitely one that we've been having on the podcast lately, and peptides. And yes, to your point, there's a lot of similarities between those, right? And you have to be careful, like, to throw stones if you know, because you're not in the same shoes, man. And that's why it's a lot of nuance. I feel like nowadays, especially online, people, that's why I love long form, having conversations about this shit, because people have lost all sense of, like, nuance. Like,
yes.
like, it's like, bro, okay, we could agree here. We could say this, like, it's okay. I think that nowadays, it's one of the reasons why, you could love or hate RFK, but I love the fact that he is raising awareness to a healthier America. And I think it's hard for anyone to sit there and debate that. Like, the fact that he's bringing attention to it. Yeah, you might disagree with his policies. You might disagree with the way he is. You might disagree with whatever. But no one else that I could think of. I'm 39. I can't think of anybody else in my life that I've, and again, I haven't really been keeping up with the politicals, since, I don't know, let's just say the last 15, 20 years. I can't think of anybody in the last 20 years that has tried to raise more awareness for this issue than him. And for that, I'm just super grateful because he's putting it on the radar, which I think will at least cause some type of conversation. Nothing might get done this year or next year or the year after, but if he keeps at it, I think there will be changes that come because I think it's necessary.
I completely agree. And there are things that he says where I'm like, yeah, I'm not fully on board with that, but I love like you said, the attention that he's bringing to it and that he's walking the walk. Like, the guy is he prioritizes his own health and fitness, which from a politician perspective, I don't know any politicians that actively do that, like that go out of their way to clearly prioritize their health and fitness, which if we're talking about, I often think of, there's a really great comedian, I forget his name. He made this hilarious joke. He was like, he goes, and I'm taking a side turn, but whatever. I'm doing the weave like Trump does. He was talking about how he lies to his son all the time, and his son's young. He's like, I lie to him all the time. Like, I lie all this time, like for whatever, any reason, blah, blah, blah. Like, and it's like, I don't know, Santa Claus, whatever. I lie to him, no problem. He's like, do you really think that politicians aren't lying to us? Like, it's just, of course they're lying. And so, from that perspective, sort of looking at politicians as potentially like a parent lying to who they view as their kids, even though they should work for us. Either way, I haven't seen a politician prioritize their health like him. And when we're looking up at someone who is part of like the leader of a health agency, I would like to have someone prioritizing their health who's the leader of a health agency, who's out there walking, who's out there hiking, who's out there lifting weights, who's out there eating what they consider to be healthy. Like, and also, and this is a separate side note about RFK. Again, I don't agree with him on everything, but I think, especially in this most recent presidential race, he was the first one to really come out with a message of unity, of being like, not trash talking the other side, not being like mean and running hate campaigns, but like, I just want us to have a united America again. I was like, this guy's filling my soul right now. Like, this is what we need. He's the only one who's talking about getting healthy, bringing attention to it, and uniting America. Like, it was, I mean, love or hate his policies, great. That's fine. We can talk about that. It's America. But the guy, like, I think his heart's in the right place.
Yeah, 100%, man. Can't disagree with that. Can't disagree with the fact that if you disagree with the answers he's proposing, you can't disagree with asking the question, and we haven't been asking the question.
Yeah. And looking at the statistics, right? And I think that I actually think I'm super excited for the next couple of years to see a shift back. Like, and I'm really excited to see what can be done because, I mean, if it could ever be done, it's right now, right? You're getting all these people on board. They want to make a shift, and I think that if not now, then potentially never. And I think that it's very exciting. I think I wanted to ask, when did you start picking up jiu-jitsu?
So I wrestled my whole life. So I wrestled from like 8 to 18. And then I took, then I went to powerlifting. And then I did my first attempt at jiu-jitsu when I was 25. And dude, you'll laugh at this. So I had wrestled my whole life and I just retired from powerlifting. And I was like, and I was living in Boston, and Kenny Florian, one of Kenny Florian's place was pretty close to me. And I was like, I'm gonna go. And I remember I had never done jiu-jitsu before.
Were you going no-gi? Because did you wrestle in college then?
No. I didn't wrestle in college. I started powerlifting by the time I got to college. So I wrestled from 8 years old until the end of high school.
Okay.
But I looked up Kenny Florian's place, and my ego was so high. I was such a piece of shit, dude. I looked up Kenny Florian's place and I just thought I was going to be so good because I wrestled for so long. I saw the beginners class and on the schedule and I was like, nah, I'm not going to do
going to the
beginners.
advanced class. Yeah.
Dude, I called. I was like, yeah, like I don't need to do beginners. They're like, cool, come to the advanced class. I went to the advanced class. I got choked out so many times by like dude, my neck was sore for 2 weeks. And I was like, yeah, I literally had to, getting out of bed, I had to pick my head up off the pillow with my own hand. It was so bad. And I was like, man, I can't do this right now. So then I took a few years off. It got back into it at 20. I think I was 28 or 29. And I was living in New York. I went to Henzo Gracie's in Midtown and that was it. I went one day and then I went every day after that. Like I got obsessed.
Yeah. And so do you roll now? Like how often do you roll now? And do you roll mainly no gi or do you roll in the gi?
Dude, I mainly do the gi. I've taken a couple months off. I actually got a bulging disc in my back. So I've taken a couple months off. This is the longest I've taken off since I started. So I haven't rolled in a couple months between the newborn, my back. We got a puppy who's 100 pounds, who's just an absolute maniac. And we're moving houses soon. So by the time we move houses, I'll be back in it going fully again. The reverse hyper has been doing wonders for my back, by the way.
Talk to me about that. So the reverse hyper, for those people who don't know what that is, you like basically lay on this machine and it creates your, spine like flexion and extension. And you probably did it on a regular basis when you were training with Louie, because I'm a
Every
huge
day.
fan. So how are you using the reverse hyper to help with your bulging disc? And what's the prescription that you recommend for people with back problems on that? And I know that's a very broad question.
It was funny because when I was 21 when I trained with Louie and my backs moved like butter. So I would do the reverse hyper and I'd be like, I don't really get this whole, like, I don't see why this is necessary. Like I would feel it in my glutes doing it properly, but like, this is just, I don't need this. Now, and I'm not old, I'm 33, but like, after 30, I feel like shit starts to feel different. And after like playing, like, doing a lot of guard and wrestling jiu-jitsu, getting slammed on the mats, like my back doesn't feel like it did when I was 21 anymore. And so, now when I go on the reverse hyper, I'm like, oh, dude, this feels so fucking good. Like the only way I can describe it is like, I do as soon as I do one set, and I do it every day. I do the reverse hyper every single day. As soon as I do one set, I just feel it's almost like you've got this itch and it's relieved. Like I have so much space and freedom to move through my back as soon as I do one set. So I have the Rogue Scout. It's
same here.
Dude, it's like $300 or $400 for this amazing piece of equipment. I thought it was going to be flimsy. I was worried about it. I contacted Tom, who owns Westside now. I contacted Tom. I was like, dude, how's the Scout? He's like, we mainly use the Scout for all of our athletes now. I bought it. It folds up. I don't ever fold it up. It's always out, ready to go. Always got weight on.
Yeah, near to
and I get on it first thing in the morning. I go out in the garage. I do a couple sets and I keep on, like, at this point, I keep like 90 pounds on it, which is relatively light for me, but I keep 90 pounds on it. I'll do a couple sets of 20. And then 2 times a week, I'll go heavier. I treat it like any strength training, but basically every day I do it because it just makes me feel better.
That's funny. So I have the Scout, I have 90 pounds on it and I do it almost every day. And I do 50 to 20 reps, but I always do the reps where my hip is off the pad. I'm looking down, looking up, et cetera, et cetera. But I typically will do 10 to 15 reps, like loose, like letting it kind of take me. And then I'll finish up with maybe like 5 to 7 at the end of that set with tension. So I'll resist on the way down a little bit. Do you do that same thing or do you only do the one where you let it? Okay.
No, it's so funny because people probably won't, like, we didn't talk about this, but it's literally exactly what I do. Yeah.
It feels right to do it that way. I don't have one in my garage gym, but honestly, it's definitely on my list. But we had one at the gym I used to train at, and I had a disc issue, and it was a huge help. You just you get off of it, and everything feels turned on, and you almost feel like you're like standing up taller.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
It's the best.
Standing up taller. Bending is, you just feel you can bend. Like I feel like I'm bending like I'm a kid again. It's just, it feels amazing immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big takeaway when I went out to Westside, was that, as the legend has it, Louie breaks his back, wants to squat 1,000 pounds again, creates a reverse hyper to basically get his back prepped up and take some attention off of that. And then he ends up squatting, he ended up hitting his goal because of that. I mean, he invented it.
He broke his back twice, dude. He broke his back twice. He tried using the 45-degree hyperextension and he couldn't move on that. And then dude, Louie's brain was he's incredible. He's like, what if instead of hinging this way and moving my upper body, what if I stabilize my upper body and have it move through my lower body? He invented it. And I'm very blessed. I have a very comprehensive home gym. That's my favorite piece of equipment. It's my favorite piece of equipment. It's amazing. Like, it's because when you're in pain, nothing else matters. And so when you have a piece of equipment that allows you to get out of pain, then that's your most important thing.
Dude, I love it. I feel like we should, Gabe, you wanted to talk a little bit about nutrition and kind of where do you want to go with nutrition before we, I want to be sensitive of Jordan's time.
I'll stay on for as long as you guys want.
Okay.
I'll stay on for a week.
So Jordan, I'll share this with you. I would say that I got to give this a funnier name, but I'm like a recovering, like carnivore influencer follower.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, at least you're recovering. That's good.
Yeah. So I appreciate a lot of the stuff that you put out now, but I think it's worth, talking about some of the misconceptions out there. And I'll share like the reason that stuff, I fell for that stuff like hook, line, and sinker is because especially once you're like getting into like health and fitness, like it just, it feels so like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. But also I think it plays on a lot of fears, right? So what I mean by that is I used to be the guy that was like, hey, if you're having an oat milk latte, like you're killing yourself because it has seed oils in it. I was the guy that
told that to me, Jordan. And I was like, bro, like he was like giving me shit for putting oat milk in my coffee. I'm like, dude,
that was just an excuse.
There's bigger problems in the world, man. Don't worry about my oat milk latte.
But like the stuff, there's a reason that a lot of people fall for this, right? There's a reason that a lot of people are just like, and I feel like a big piece of recovering from that was having kids because you start a family and all of a sudden you just don't have all this like extra like energy to focus on like looking at every ingredient list and like trying to find something that doesn't have seed oils is like literally impossible. But also like, starting to follow some of like a lot of the common sense people out there like Lane Norton, like, Optimized Nutrition, E.C. Sinkowski, like stuff like that. And then you're just like, oh, like I'm majoring in the minors here in a big way. So I'd love, because I know that a lot of the content you put out now is trying to debunk a lot of that stuff. Why do you think that stuff is so powerful? And what are people getting wrong about being so, especially with, RFK now and a lot of that movement? What are people getting wrong about being so focused on the food dyes, the seed oils, all of that stuff?
Okay, so before I dive into that, I just pulled up a picture of a conversation I had, and I use this. This is one of many pictures I've received, by the way. A guy who is fully carnivore, who didn't like my very anti-carnivore stance, and I've said this all the time. I'm like, listen. If you want to do it, that's fine. Just get your blood work done regularly. Please, just get your blood work done. Like, because if you just get your blood work done at least once every 6 months so that you can actually objectively know how your health is. This guy, I'm going to show you this picture.
Yep. What does
this
it say?
This is his blood. It
Yep.
says, man, I screwed myself bad on the carnivore diet for a year. Let me know if you want pictures. I will say it's like hospitalization and multiple blood draws because labs are failing due to triglycerides and cholesterol. You see the picture of his blood?
Yeah.
Do you know what that is? You know what that white stuff is?
No.
That's fat.
That came out of his blood.
That came out of his fucking blood, dude.
No, stop it.
If you don't believe me, Google search blood in fat. Like, and you can see like this is a real condition.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what triglycerides are. And when it's so much, and you have so much in your blood, what do you think? Why do you think people have heart attacks and strokes? Because their blood gets so thick and so this is literally the image of what happens. And there are, like, I guarantee any doctors listening or any people who've drawn blood will know some people have a much harder time getting their blood drawn because it's so thick and so difficult to pull out because of all the fat. I can see you're looking, Jason. You can see these pictures right now.
Oh, bro. Dude, some of these are really bad.
Dude, this is people's blood. And so they don't get it. This is why when these fucking influencers are saying your cholesterol doesn't matter, triglyceride, like, dude, they are literally killing people. And this is why, like, I'm not a fan of a plant-based diet either, to be honest. Like, you can do it healthily, but the most unhealthy and the most dangerous thing that is happening right now, nutrition-wise, is the nonstop pushing of the carnivore diet. It is, without question, our kids and grandkids will read about this in history books, about the people who died an early death because they followed people on social media saying you need to be eating carnivore. It is the most dangerous thing that they could be doing, not only for your blood, but also for your for your colon. I mean, it is unbelievably dangerous.
How about the argument? Go ahead, Gabe.
Well, I was just going to say, so then what is going on with some of the influencers out there that are they not following it themselves? Because I mean, they claim that they're doing great, that they've seen people that do great. Is it just there's always going to be a small segment that this does work for? Like, what's kind of going on there?
So
you mentioned Jordan
there's a lot
times. He's mentioned that. Yeah, go for
it. So there's a lot to consider here. I'll start by saying there will always be some segment of the population that might be able to be okay, right? That, like, there are outliers for sure. But when we're looking at large scale data, we need to understand the importance of fiber, and we need to understand the importance of not just only eating fucking meat all the time. And large scale data makes that very clear for us. With that being said, and I hope that this is the least shocking thing to anybody, I've been around people with really big audiences on a very regular basis. And the amount of them who lie about what they do in their day-to-day life is disgusting and so common. I mean, think about this. I'm not going to say any names. The person who wrote the book on carnivore, while he was writing the book, by his own admission, was having health issues, stopped doing carnivore before he published the book, sold the book, and to this day is still selling the book on carnivore, even though he now doesn't agree that it's helpful or healthy. This is the guy who wrote the book on it. And he's come out publicly and said, yeah, during this time frame, I was having heart palpitations, major health issues. So then I stopped doing pure carnivore and I started adding fruit and all this other stuff. And he still sells the book, by the way. So not only are people lying about it and not following it, but you don't know what fucking drugs they're taking to help with the potentially adverse side effects that they would be having if they weren't taking those drugs. So, I mean, there are so many things going on that we don't know. And I hope, I don't want anyone to die an early death. I'm not wishing early death on anybody. I am scared shitless that a lot of these people will be having severe health consequences as a result of following this. And as for, like, why is it so popular? Well, it's just basic marketing 101. Like, you have a unique fix lean to a common problem.
You could get pretty damn lean.
Yeah, you get super quickly. Lean.
Yeah, that's why.
Shocker. You eat all protein and you get shocking, right? You stop eating a lot of carbs. You stop eating a lot of processed stuff.
So what do you think about the primal diet then? What do you think about mainly, carnivore with fruit? And you're a fan of that?
Here's what I would say. Like, I think I have no issue with that from the perspective of a lot of animal protein, fruits. I would like some vegetables. I would like beans and lentils in there. That would be, like, more beneficial for me. I would like to see more fish as opposed to just purely red meat. I would like to see some salmon in there. Like, I don't know what the fucking problem is with that. Like, I'd love people getting more salmon in there. I'd love people getting more beans and lentils in there. The people who say vegetables are poisonous and toxic, it's like, how many people do you know who died from eating vegetables? Are you fucking stupid? Like, how many people got admitted to the hospital because of their kale intake? You fucking idiot. Like, come on, dude. And you don't even have to like, I don't necessarily like kale, but there's so many vegetables. Come on. It's just stupid. It's just fucking stupid. So, I mean, listen, if we look at from an actual health perspective, we look at it from a data perspective, there are many, many diets that are very, very healthy for you. The Japanese have among the healthiest populations. Mediterraneans have very healthy populations. Like, come on, let's be serious. Like, a lot of protein, very good for you. Fiber, very good for you. Unless you have some type of an IBS or you have an issue with that perspective, great. If you got IBS, then let go on the fiber. But I'm not talking to you in the same way. Like, I'm not talking to people who are type 1 diabetics and telling them what to do. If you're an otherwise healthy individual, let's have an overall balanced approach to nutrition. I don't get why this is controversial. Like, you should have a balanced diet, carbs, fruits, vegetables, protein, fiber, high quality fat. Like, include all of it. What the fuck is, and eat an appropriate amount of calories. It's not complicated.
I think that's just the really and timely point that you brought up with how many people with large audiences aren't being completely honest. Because just yesterday or just this week, we were recording with a different guest, and he was talking about someone in like the business, like mentoring space, you know, going into a cold plunge for like a second for the video, but doesn't do it himself, like, you know, behind closed doors.
Yes.
Admitting that he hates it, can't do it, but, you know, he'll post a video and say how important it is and how you should be doing it. So it was interesting that you brought that up, because there was another example that we heard just this week.
I got really upset the other day. A good friend of mine texted me. Again, I'm not going to say any names. A good friend of mine texted me the other day, because I shit on AG1, like the athletic green stuff. It's just like, it's a waste of money. It's a waste of money. And the amount of money that these influencers are getting paid to promote it, who don't use it, like the benefits, the research is not there. It's not dangerous. If you want to take it, great. But like, you could get a multivitamin for way fucking less and you get probably more benefits. Either way, one of my friends messaged me like, hey, like, just so you know, I started promoting like not AG1, but he's promoting something else. And he's like, and it really sucks because like, I agree with everything you say, but I also want to get paid. He wrote this to me in a text message. And this is someone who's very, very well known in the industry, who has a lot of trust going behind him. And I didn't even reply. I was like, I didn't even say anything. I didn't recognize the text because I'm not going to say anything good. So I'm just not going to say anything at all. The number of people who lie and promote bullshit on here, who are saying doing the ice baths and they're not doing the ice baths. You know what? I said I was going to name a name. Liver King. There were people who thought Liver King was natural. Are you fucking stupid? And then it comes out he's $15,000 a month and on drugs. By the way, like, and just to be empathetic here, I feel really bad for that guy. Because if you look at the emails, the dude's got body dysmorphia. And he's over here thinking he looks soft and weak. And he's taking $15,000 a month of steroids. Like, I feel very bad for him. But it's like, you don't understand that people are lying to you. And people look at someone like him and a lot of people are like, well, obviously he was lying. It's like, and how many people are not obviously lying? How many people are not so obvious about it? Like, yes, so freaking many. It's,
you know, I know, Jordan, you're in the world. I mean, dude, at least in my world, I haven't experienced that much of that. You know, I'd like to pride myself of like anything we say, we back up and we do. But maybe that's because like maybe from the CrossFit background, like if you talk shit, you had to go back it up. Otherwise you're going to look like a total schmuck in front of a bunch of people. I don't know. Maybe. And the jiu-jitsu, if you talk shit, you better be able to back that up because otherwise you're going to get choked out. Like, and even the shooting audience, like, I guess maybe the reason why I don't see as much of it is because eventually if you talk shit and you can't back it up in like at least those worlds, people are going to find out. Like we're not talking about just the way you look. You need to be able to go perform too. But it is a shame that a guy like you with the reach that you do can say that about the community, because the people who lose are actually the people who are getting convinced of something where that isn't backed by the person they're actually getting led from. I think that's really unfortunate, you know, and I hope that those type of people get, you know, realize that they should be honest with what they're putting out, because they have a responsibility to their audience to share real information that they're going through. Anyways, yeah.
But Jay, I think that the analogy, or I think the parallel in the fitness space is people that go out there and claim that they're natural and they're not. Because how would you know that in whatever it is, the BJJ space, whatever. I think that, again, if you say that, hey, I'm using this stuff and that's why I'm this good. But if people out there, and I know that this happens, it's not zero, lie about how they get the physical strength and the ability that they have. And they're like, hey, it's because I follow this program. You can buy it here. That to me would be the parallel to the nutrition side of stuff. And I know that that stuff does happen. I think it's naive to think it doesn't.
Yeah. Hey, Jordan, just out of curiosity, like, we recently just got our blood work done. Gabe, did you get yours back yet?
Yeah.
Did you score over 91?
No, I got an 86. I think.
Oh, my man. So we went through a company called Blokes, and they give you like a rating score of like how your optimization is. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is not because I want to hate on the fact that I had a better optimization score than Gabe.
That's exactly why.
But
yeah,
because
86. I just pulled it up. Yeah,
I am curious. You brought up a note about blood work, and I think this is a really important thing that you brought up. Is that if you want to try carnivore, so I did carnivore for 40 days. I've done a bunch of different things, which, by the way, for the record, in our house, I will not be doing a restricting type of diet ever again in our house. I won't. I think that, at least for me, it sent the wrong message to my daughter in particular, and I think that I learned a lot from that experience. So I won't be doing that again. I think people could do whatever they want, but on the blood work perspective, if you want to go out and do carnivore, if you want to do primal, if you want to do vegan, how often do you recommend getting your blood work done? Because I do feel like if you see underneath the hood, at least it backs up some of this stuff that you might be thinking.
Listen, I take a more aggressive approach with it. I say at least every 6 months, if you're going to do something extreme like carnivore. I think for just general health, annually is the minimum. For me, I love experiments. I love experimenting with what I'm doing. And so like, I prefer to do it like once every quarter. Like I just enjoy it. That's just for me, but like, I don't recommend that. But like, I'm experimenting a lot, trying new things. I want to see like what the direct impact is of the last 3 months. So like, that's what I like to do, but at least every 6 months, especially if you're doing something so restrictive like carnivore. And what I'll say is, I'm not going to say there's no utility for something like carnivore. There is utility for people who have very real health issues. And the purpose of carnivore should be an elimination diet to figure out what's causing you problems. Like right. You should start with it, do it for, 30 days, maybe 60 days, and then slowly reintroduce things back in so you know which foods are causing you problems. It's not supposed to be what the fuck you follow your whole life. It's a terrible idea. It's a really, really bad idea. I don't know what's going to happen for people to realize this. It's stupid.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it on, because you remove all these things, then you can start adding in, you can start recognizing that, hey, maybe gluten causes issues. Maybe it is these leafy greens that have a micro toxicity that's causing me to have gut issues. Maybe the kale is hurting me. I don't know, but at least you could remove and then build back in. But I want to kind of close out on a question for you about the CGM. So I wore a CGM for 40 days, and it was difficult doing jiu-jitsu with because it was very difficult. But people, if the CGM continuous glucose monitor, there is a small needle that goes in your body that tells your blood sugar levels, but it's like a straw. So it's not like it was fine to jiu-jitsu with. What was your biggest takeaway with the CGM? And what do you think you broke down in terms of like, what myth did you kind of, break by wearing that for a while? What's your takeaway?
So there were a lot of myths, but I did it right around a time where this woman who, she calls herself a goddess, which I've got a problem with in and of itself. But like, she was, yeah, just like, I don't like it when people refer to themselves as a deity, it's, I don't know. It's just like, that's like the chutzpah that takes is pretty fucking wild. But she was making waves and making all these claims around how glucose is going to make it impossible to lose fat. And of course, later she comes out with her fucking product that is going to help reduce blood sugar spikes. And meanwhile, she's been demonizing like having any sweets. And then of course, in her marketing for her product, she's like, you can eat cakes as long as you fucking take my product. It's like, you motherfucker, really? Anyway, so I was like, listen, people think if you spike your blood sugar, you can't lose weight. So I was like, all right, I'll spike my blood sugar every single day. There were some days where I literally ate raw sugar. There were some days where I had donuts, some days where I had gummy worms, some days like whatever it is. Every day for 30 days straight, I spiked my blood sugar. I lost 12 pounds in 30 days. And yes, I was on a severe calorie deficit to make that happen. But I have the data to show you I spiked my blood sugar super high every single day, at least one time a day. Sometimes, you know what was funny? The thing that spiked my blood sugar the most? Guess what was it spiked my blood sugar the most? Guess what?
Exercise?
I have an idea. It's exercise.
So outside of exercise, that is a really good, and only someone who really understands blood sugar would know that, which is awesome. Jiu-Jitsu destroyed my blood sugar. Holy shit. Like I'd go in fasted and it would boom. Like it would go
so why
crazy.
do you think that? So Gabe and I talked about this on the podcast. I would never see blood sugar spikes like I do in jiu-jitsu. Like, I mean, bro, it would be off the chart. Do you think it's the fight or flight mode that you think is kicking in? Do you think that's what it is? Because even if I did a hard CrossFit workout, it wouldn't even get close to when I did jiu-jitsu.
So I think it's actually really interesting that you bring it up in terms of the CrossFit workout versus jiu-jitsu. I don't know in terms of the fight or flight, because I would imagine you're at a point in your jiu-jitsu where you probably don't get scared. Like, I don't think you're really scared as much. You know, like you're probably pretty calm even in a really dangerous situation, you know? Like, if you're a white belt, I would say, yeah, for sure. Yeah. But at this point, you're probably like, you're getting choked out, you're probably like, nah, whatever. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference as you progress. So the reason that happens is because your body needs energy. And so your body is literally creating energy. It's dumping blood sugar into your bloodstream so that you can use that energy. I'm surprised to hear that it didn't happen with a CrossFit workout. The only reason I could potentially think that is because maybe you're more efficient with your CrossFit stuff than you are with jiu-jitsu, potentially. But also, I mean, like, dude, jiu-jitsu is brutal, especially a hard round. Like it's really like, it's brutal. So especially I would imagine like no gi where you're just going nuts. But either like with the gi, you can slow it down and like maybe not go as hard, but with the gi, with the no gi going really hard, I would imagine it's more of a dump. But completely fasted, high intensity exercise, your body needs that energy. So and that was one of the more surprising things to me. Ironically, all the type 1 diabetics were like, yeah, obviously, motherfucker, like this is basic physiology, which is like, I learned so much about, dude, I think the biggest takeaway lesson was not only how hard type 1 diabetics have it and how much like they really need to be aware of what's going on, but the parents of a young type 1 diabetic, dude. Oh my Lord. You've got a kid who can't necessarily communicate yet, or even like they can, but you've got to constantly be monitoring their blood sugar. You're like that was the most amount of empathy that I've gained from doing an experiment, because I had just never considered it before, which is, if you want to talk about privilege, like what a privilege to not have to worry about your child's blood sugar, you know? But I think the food that spiked it the most was watermelon. And I ate watermelon every single day. And in a pound of watermelon has 140 calories. So it's my like go-to favorite fat loss food because it'll fill you up for like next to no calories and it's delicious. Watermelon spiked my blood sugar like crazy. It would shoot up, insane. And that's literally my, like, if I want to ever go on a fat loss phase, watermelon is my number one food because it fills me up for so few calories. So I think people were really surprised because I was able to spike my blood sugar every single day and still lose fat over the course of a month, lose 12 pounds. And the other thing that actually really took me by surprise is, because I went to school for nutrition and this is what I went to school for. I've been told my whole life that if you have fast digesting carbs, you're going to have a quick spike and you're going to have a crash and feel like shit. If you have slow digesting carbs, your energy will be less affected. I noticed a zero difference. Like when I saw my glucose spikes going up like crazy from different things, my energy, zero impact based on how fast or slow my glucose spiked, which for me, and I'm not saying that's for everyone, but it was just insightful for me as an individual and my personal response. It's like, I've been told my whole life, fast digesting carbs are going to make me tired really soon. I didn't notice that at all. I noticed zero difference.
I just love the fact that, like, one of the reasons, when we first met years ago, one of the things that I've liked about you is like, dude, you like drink a Coke like every day. Like you're just kind of like using your body as a laboratory and then getting the data to make claims and discussion points. And I think that that's powerful. And I know that, I think that I like what you're doing and I want to see more of it. And dude, the fact that now, I get to watch this journey with you raising 2 young girls and I don't know, it's been fun for me. So I want to say thank you so much for being on the show, man. I think right now is a really good time for society to get back to some just simple principles of like eating real food, balancing it out, and exercising. And I think we'd all be shocked on what happens to society if every one of us just started doing more of that. That's it.
Bro, especially right now, that's the only thing you have control over, really, that's it. And it's, man, if people knew how much it impacted their health, how much, even just a little bit, just doing a little bit impacted their health. If they knew how much a little bit of strength training improved their bone density, and when people hear bone density, I think they sort of tune out. They're like, oh, that's boring. It's like, you wouldn't think it's boring if you had a parent who fell and broke their hip and died as a result of it. It's like, someone over 70, they fall, their likelihood of dying is so freaking high. And when we're talking about bone density, like, that's what we're talking about. That's why you need to strength train, because if you fall and you break your bone as you get older, good fucking luck. Like, that's a major problem. The amount that doing a little bit of walking can do, the amount that doing a little bit of zone 2, the amount that even a little bit of self-defense can do for your confidence, that can help your situational awareness, the amount that just a little bit of something can do to improve your life. Where I think people have this, dude, I hate when people say they're a perfectionist. It's the most annoying fucking thing in the world to me, because people are like, oh, well, I don't do it because I'm a perfectionist. I'm like, I guarantee you there are things you do in your life that you don't do perfectly. You're just picking and choosing which things you're a perfectionist at so you can justify not doing this one at all. You're not a perfectionist. You don't want to do this one thing. Do a little bit. Just do a little and it will make a dramatic impact on your life. And I know it's a controversial. Some people get mad when I say this. Exercise is literally medicine. Like, it is. Exercise is literally medicine. Fucking do it. It is the most important thing you can do for your health.
Dude, movement is medicine, man. I agree 100%. Well, dude, I really appreciate your time. For people who want more information about what you got going on, is Instagram just the best place to go? Because we could put that in the podcast show notes.
Yeah, my Instagram, my podcasts are both great, man. Thank you so much.
Hell yeah. Well, dude, I really appreciate everyone who's checked out this episode. I know I got a lot from it. I love talking to Jordan, and I really appreciate everybody who enjoyed this episode. Go back, check out the other ones with all other amazing guests, as well as Gabe and I, just kind of riffing on our own. Appreciate all you guys. Leave the podcast a rating and review and share it with a friend if you got as much value out of this episode as I did. Keep training hard.